2024. Gareth Southgate's side play on Wednesday. Tomorrow, it's Spain versus France from 7:30 on BBC One and iPlayer. Now at the time at 1 o'clock, it's the BBC News with Anna Foster.
Today at 1, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves promises to kickstart economic growth. In her first speech, she announced more house building and less planning red tape.
Growth was the Labour Party's mission in opposition. It is now our national mission. There is no time to waste.
Sir Keir Starmer completes his nation's tour after visiting Northern Ireland this morning. He's in Wales this lunchtime. Also on the programme, a wave of Russian missile attacks, including one on a children's hospital, kills more than 20 people across Ukraine. And Las Vegas breaks temperature records amid an extreme US heatwave.
On BBC London, the dangers of swimming in open
number
water.
2 seed, hoping to
School
avoid the same
children hear
fate
how
as
to
the
keep
women's.
themselves
Novak
safe this
Djokovic
summer
attempts to
after
avoid a
previous
shock
tragedies in
and
the
reach the
capital.
Wimbledon quarter-finals later.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. The new Labour government is beginning its first full week in power, with Sir Keir Starmer's cabinet making a series of announcements on health, education, immigration and the economy. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has promised to make kickstarting economic growth a national mission. A key part of that is a plan to reintroduce compulsory house building targets, as our chief economics correspondent Darshini David explains. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, says there isn't a quick fix to the problem of overcrowding in prisons. It's one of the key challenges facing the new government, as most jails are already considered full. She's been talking about neighbourhood crime and antisocial behaviour at a police station in South London. Our UK correspondent Adina Campbell reports. The Prime Minister is completing his tour of the UK nations. Sir Keir Starmer has arrived in Wales, where he's meeting First Minister Vaughan Gething. This morning, he held talks with party leaders in Northern Ireland. Well, in a moment, we'll speak to our correspondent in Belfast, Chris Page. But first, let's speak to Howell Griffith, who's in Cardiff. And Howell, what will be top of the agenda there? It looks like we've just lost the line to Howell, so let's go straight to Chris Page in Belfast. Chris, what was talked about this morning? The time now is 14 minutes past 1. Our top story this afternoon. Rachel Reeves promises to make economic growth a national mission in her first speech as Chancellor. And searing heat claims the life of a motorcyclist in California's Death Valley as Las Vegas breaks temperature records.
And on BBC London, we meet the chess prodigy who's becoming the youngest person to represent England in any sport internationally.
We hear from England's record-breaking fast
we'll be
bowler
live at
James
Wimbledon with
Anderson
Kate,
as he
who will
prepares
have
for
all the
his
details of the
international swan
forecast
song
for this
in the
week.
first test.
A large series of daylight Russian missile attacks has killed at least 20 people across Ukraine. President Zelensky said that 5 different cities had been targeted. Dozens more people have been injured, and the country's biggest children's hospital in Kyiv was hit and badly damaged. Well, these are live pictures from Kyiv, and you can see there the aftermath of that strike on the children's hospital. This report now from Vitaly Shevchenko. France is facing political deadlock after the final round of voting in snap parliamentary elections. This time, there was a victory for the left-wing New Popular Front alliance, which pushed the far-right National Rally into third place. In practice, it means that no party now has a majority and a mandate to govern in a country that has a big summer ahead. Our correspondent in Paris, Hugh Schofield, has the story. The ballot has opened today for workers at Amazon to decide whether they want to be represented by a trade union. It would be the first time the online giant recognised a trade union for its staff in the UK. 40% of workers at the Coventry site would have to vote in favour for the GMB union to represent them. Amazon says it values a direct relationship with its employees. And a woman from Oxfordshire who recently admitted giving her terminally ill son a fatal overdose more than 40 years ago has died. Antonia Cooper, who was 77, had cancer. Ms. Cooper said she gave her then 7-year-old son Hamish a lethal dose of morphine to end his suffering. She spoke out in an effort to change the law on assisted dying. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has arrived in Moscow on his first visit since Russia invaded Ukraine almost 2.5 years ago. India has benefited from Western sanctions on Russia, which means it can buy its fuel at deep discounts. Mr. Modi has refused to criticise Russia's actions in Ukraine, insisting he remains neutral. More than 50 million people in the United States are on heat alert as the west of the country experiences a record-breaking heat wave. Las Vegas recorded its highest temperatures on record yesterday, and Death Valley in California is bracing for the same in the next few days. Thomas McGill has more. Novak Djokovic says he expects fireworks on court when he tries to reach the Wimbledon quarter-finals later. He's taking on the Danish player Holger Rune, 16 years his junior, as he tries to land a record 25th Grand Slam victory. Well, our sports reporter Joe Curry is outside centre court. Joe, an exciting match in prospect, this one. Joe, at Wimbledon, thank you, and fingers crossed for that weather later. Now, England are preparing to face the Netherlands in the Euro 2024 semi-final on Wednesday. Gareth Southgate will be hoping the dramatic win on penalties energises his team as he becomes the first England manager to lead the national side to 3 major tournament semi-finals. John Watson joins us from Dortmund. How's the mood there, John? Thank you, John. A reminder of our top headline this afternoon. Rachel Reeves promises to make economic growth a national mission in her first speech as Chancellor. And the actor Joanna Page talks about the Gavin and Stacey finale and her new job as a wildlife volunteer.
I've never asked this question.
We'll have a full forecast in the next half hour, but it's time now for a quick look at the weather. Here's Elizabeth Rizzini.
Hello, thank you, Anna. Well, it's felt like a very wet July so far, hasn't it? And this, I'll have all the details later in the programme.
Elizabeth, thank you. As the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves promises the government will work to boost the UK's economic growth. What might that look like? Nina Warhurst has been to one cafe in Greater Manchester to find out what families and small businesses are hoping for. Well, it is going to be a very busy week for the government. The new Parliament sits for the first time tomorrow, and one of its tasks is to elect the Speaker of the House of Commons. Sir Keir Starmer is then due to fly to Washington for the NATO Leaders Summit, where he'll meet the US President Joe Biden and reaffirm the UK's support for Ukraine. And then the King's speech is expected to take place on the 17th of July, setting out the government's legislative programme and its priorities. King Charles will read the speech in the House of Lords, marking the state opening of Parliament. Well, our political editor Chris Mason joins us now from Westminster. Chris, it is a packed diary. How typical is that for a new government? Chris, your name on the book, a very first day at school vibe there. Thank you for joining us, Chris Mason, our political editor live at Westminster. And still to come on today's programme, we'll be hearing from the campaigners who fought for change under the previous government and are hoping that the change in power will aid their causes. First, though, it's time to join our colleagues for the news where you are.
Hello, welcome to Sportsday with me, Hugh Ferris. Our top stories. We'll be live at Wimbledon, where 7-time champion and number 2 seed Novak Djokovic takes on Denmark's Holger Rune later for a place in the quarterfinals.
Family of a teenager who drowned after jumping into a river
out. Jimmy Anderson reflects on a remarkable career ahead of his farewell test against the West Indies at Lords this week.
While swimming in Richmond 2 years ago.
Paralympics GB announced the 10 rowers who will represent them
to chat to local school children about the hidden dangers of open water swimming. Lakshmi Gopal has more.
This is London's first fire station water safety hub, and the idea is to help educate people about water safety and to try to prevent drownings. And that's why the children are here today.
We are into
to help
the
learn and be
second week
educated.
at Wimbledon, and the championships no
to
longer
help
have
with
any
that,
British players left in the singles, or indeed 8 of the top 10 women's scene. There is, of course, a lot more sports news on the BBC website. That's also where you can follow all the day's action at Wimbledon. Head to bbc.co.uk.
Well, that's all from us here on the lunchtime team.
Tennis is also on BBC Two right now. Later as well, we'll hear from Luke Shaw from the England camp ahead of that European Championship
Well, Riz will be here with the news at 6:30. I hope you can join her then. But for now, though, it's back to Anna Foster for the rest of the 1 o'clock news. Bye-bye.
Now, the Prime Minister is completing his tour of the UK nations. Sir Keir Starmer is in Wales after starting the day in Northern Ireland, where he met with party leaders. Our Ireland correspondent Chris Page reports. A new government in Westminster means a whole new range of policies and priorities. But for campaigners, many of whom are driven by deeply personal experiences, the issues that they want to see change on remain the same. Jessica Lane reports on 3 people whose efforts to convince politicians will continue. Now, it might seem a little strange to be looking ahead to Christmas at the height of summer, but the cast of Gavin and Stacey are doing exactly that. There is one final Tie Up the Loose Ends episode coming at the end of the year, and our entertainment correspondent David Silito has been speaking to Joanna Page about what's in store for Stacey and a new project too. Maybe he has. Let's get the weather now with Elizabeth.
Hello, thank you again, Anna. Well, it was cloudy, as you could see from that last report, in Surrey, but some of the best of the sunshine is further north with some brighter spells, but temperatures dropping again by the time we get to the end of the week, Anna.
Thank you, Lizzie. And that is all from today's BBC News at 1. From me and the team here, thank you for watching. Goodbye.
This summer, the BBC Sounds app gives you access to the biggest sporting events and the most iconic